how can I find my customer in the right moment, in the right time, telling the right story? So if you have a better description of everything that's happening, we can connect if people are watching that specific content.
Con una posición consolidada en el ecosistema publicitario digital, al convertir el análisis de datos en el eje central de sus estrategias mediante el uso de tecnología avanzada y modelos predictivos. Su estrategia en la recopilación y análisis de datos para destacar insights clave le permite llevar a las marcas a crear conexiones más profundas y relevantes con los consumidores. Él es Ricardo Prado, Head de Insights and Analytics Latinoamérica de Samsung Ads.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast this week. We're going to do it in English because we have Ricardo Prado with us. And I think having Ricardo Prado, he's head of analytics and insights for Latin America. Ricardo is a very interesting person because he understands data in a way that I would say not many people understand. And that's important when thinking about what's going to happen in Mexico in the next, I would say, 12 to 18 months. Mexico is going to have a huge surge of tourists around soccer matches and sports next year. And it's not only soccer matches. When you think of it, it's Formula One teams and also golf and all these international events. So having somebody that understands what's happening with the consumer, how they're getting their information, how they're enjoying these events through screens is crucial. And as I said, he's head of analytics and insights Latam for Samsung Ads. So I'm really happy, Ricardo. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. It's always a pleasure to be here in Mexico and attend all these events. And this year is special because we are excited about next year, everything that's going to be happening in Mexico. So yeah, it's a very special time.
Yes, I think when you look at the number of tourists and you look at the number of events Mexico is going to have in the next 18 months, it's crazy the size of the market. And I think when you look at the data you are looking in Samsung, it must be thrilling to see how the consumer is changing what they're expecting of the next 18 months.
It is because I work with data for almost more than 20 years now. And I worked in financial companies. I worked for the United Nations as well. So I'm dealing with data for a long time. And I used to say that I worked with big data, but I didn't know what I was saying before I started looking to all this information that the connected TV can provide to us. Because only in Mexico, in Samsung TVs, we have this scale of almost 10 million TVs,
Wow.
0.5 million TVs, to be more specific. It's a lot of information. And can you imagine, because we own the hardware, we are the manufacturers, basically we can see everything that happens when the consumer is interacting with the TV. So if they switch channels, if they turn on the TV in a specific period of the day, and we can measure all this flow of information, all the journey of the consumer. And we have a really powerful tool in our TVs that is called ACR, Automatic Content Recognition. So, for example, we receive a screenshot every 3 seconds of everything that's happening in these 9.5 million TVs. Based on that, we can compare this image with some providers. So we hire some providers to show us all the data and the metadata for that. So they explain what this image means. And we compare that in an algorithm. And we say, okay, this TV was connected watching a football match, watching a cooking show, reality show, all these things. So with the connected TV information, we can understand everything. So you can imagine the volume of data, almost 700 million hours of consumption every month in Mexico. It's a lot. So to use all this information without intelligence, and here I'm talking about human intelligence before talk about artificial intelligence. We need to understand the clusters. We need to understand what it exactly means and connect to the consumers. That's the key.
I guess my first question would be, how many hours do Mexicans watch TV on average?
700 million hours in total. So depending on the group of people, if you consider people that watch, like they are heavy users, they watch, considering streaming and linear, 6 to 9 hours a day.
Wow,
So
that's a lot.
It's a lot.
When you think about phones, when you think about your computer screen or probably your iPad, uh, when you think about your tablet, when you think about, you know, your TV, that's a lot of screen time. Because those 6 hours is just TV. You still have to add your tab time, your tablet time. You still have to add your phone time.
Exactly. And this is all time that all the companies are trying to get from the consumers, because now for everything. So streaming are competing with linear content, that are competing with the gaming industry as well, because it's all our time.
So, and how much is streaming and how much is linear content? Is it still split?
It's been changing with time. So I've been working in Samsung for more than 4 years now. And since the first year, we see a decrease in the linear content consumption, but it's not that big. But every year it decreases a little bit, and the streaming is growing. So only in Mexico, in these 9.5 million TVs I mentioned, 40% of the Mexicans don't watch linear content at all anymore. So they don't have an antenna, they don't have cable TV, they only watch streaming or any system app like Fit app to exercise, or video game, or music, streaming music, but not linear. So this behavior is really, really challenge for the brands to find their consumer. Because if you have a strategy, and a lot of companies have this strategy to focus in linear advertising, you will be missing 40% already. And if you consider people that watch less than 1 hour, so it's really hard to find them. It's more 20%. So it's almost 60% of the Mexican TV in our Samsung database that don't watch linear anymore or watch less than 1 hour. So, and if you add to that the number of times that they switch channels, it's almost 10 to 11 channels every month. It's almost impossible to find them. So you need to invest a lot of money, a lot of frequency to be able to reach this person. So the connected TV data can help the advertisers to find this person in the right time, telling the right story. So this is something we need to have in mind. CTV is here to try to find this, to help the brands to find their clients.
I would say probably you guys are in a unique position to understand what people are watching. So it's a very personal, very unique, very special way of understanding what people prefer to watch.
Exactly. Because today we don't switch channels only. In the past, the option you had was in a cable TV, you switch channels, you had hundreds of options. So it was a challenge. But today we have all these options. We still have all these options, and we have different platforms.
Yeah.
So people are watching streaming number 1, streaming number 2. So they get tired to that. They go to video game. They watch linear TV. They listen to music. There are many, many things that they do in the connected TV.
And I would say probably then, especially in the urban areas, the TV has changed locations. There used to be a separate TV room, at least in the 80s, but I would say that as homes have shrunken, as households are smaller, less kids, then the TV moves out of a TV room into probably the living room. And especially in smaller urban apartments, it coexists with a dining room. And it's even a place where you can, I've noticed people now in apartments use a TV for entertaining, putting music and videos while there's a party or a dinner party for that matter. And it's so interesting because the TV used to be something that you would use only for watching TV. Now we use it for even doing exercise, as you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a challenge for the advertisers, this situation with the big screen, because we always need to consider the co-viewing situation. TV is sharing experience.
Yeah.
So, of course, I remember a few years ago, people were saying the mobile will take all the viewership, so everybody will have their own
Yeah.
device to watch there. Yeah, that's true, but there are specific content that people love to watch in the big screen and sharing the experience. So for example, we consider in each household around 3 people. So you can multiply these almost 10 million TVs in Mexico for 3.
Which makes sense because the
Yeah.
average number of kids per couple in Mexico is 3. So it sort of makes sense that the household would revolve around this number, right?
Yeah, exactly. And for the advertiser, you need to think not only about the demographic information that we used to use in the past, like 18 to 24, male, high income. Yeah, it's something we can use depending on the media you're using. But for CTV, we don't need to do that because we see the content. Everything is contextual. So let's think about the journey. I see that the TV has been turned on at 8 a.m. and they start broadcast kids content. So for 2 or 3 hours. In the afternoon, they switch to news and a soap opera, for example. And late night, they watch movies or sports. Looking to this journey, you can infer that there's a family there. A kid, maybe someone taking care of the kid in the afternoon or waiting for them to get back from the school. And in the late night, everybody's together watching different content. And for the advertiser, it's good to understand all this journey because you can send your communication in the right time. So if you want to do advertising for the whole family, maybe late night for this group of TVs is the best option. If you need to focus in something related to family but more to kids as well, where the parents are gonna be watching together, so you can go to the morning or afternoon. So not only the demographic, we need to consider the TV as a co-viewing device and understand everything that's happening in the TV.
I think it's interesting when you think about it. I would assume that Mexicans are very complex in the number of, for example, platforms they're subscribed for. And they probably switch from whatever options are there. Are you also tracking which platforms are preferred and which ones at what time it preferred? Because then again, I assume that the preference would change. Probably it would be different when it's a Sunday than when it's a Monday, for example.
Yeah, it's totally true. And in Mexico, the average number of apps that we consume every month is 5.
Wow. And that's so interesting because each one of these apps in most cases it has a cost associated with it. You have to pay a monthly bill.
Yeah, it's true. Of course, there is a lot of consumption in free apps as well. But yeah, the content is fragmented. Today is really hard to find exactly what you want to watch. And if you go to sports, for example, it's really hard to learn or to remember who owns the rights of each championship.
Yeah.
So if you're following like a national championship, maybe you can go to the linear TV to have the rights. It's okay. But if it's something specific for Europe or international championship, maybe you need to go to a specific streaming, and not always you have the subscription for that streaming. So what happens really often is they sign up for this streaming, watch what they want to watch, and then cancel the subscription. They go to a different one. But on average, they are keeping 5 apps.
I think that sort of proves a point in terms that the content is king and people follow content, whatever platform it is. And I think that's also true for sports. If you're a car enthusiast and you like Formula One, for example, probably you'll want to subscribe, as you said, to that app or follow it in open linear to be whatever. But if you're a soccer fan, you'll probably have other patterns, and probably it's also a seasonality thing, right? When the soccer season ends, probably the baseball season starts or golf starts or whatever, and probably the sports consumer, I'm assuming, has different stages within a same year. Does that make sense?
No, total sense. We ran really recently, yesterday, we presented a study showing the behavior of the Mexican consumer specifically about football. And in this study, one layer that we were exploring is the fragmented attention and the number of options that we have. So on average, we are following 6 different championships in the entire year
And probably 6 different teams.
in 5 different platforms or channels.
Wow.
And one question we asked was, do you have a preferred platform? So if you have a preferred platform, you're gonna try to watch everything there. And only 35% mentioned that they have a preferred platform. So content is king. Content drives where the subscription is. And for sports, that's it. If they have 6 different championships and they are in 6 different platforms, yeah, the sport fan, the football fan is gonna subscribe for that and watching that books.
Ricardo, tell me if this makes sense and if you agree. I have this feeling that the stadium is the unifying area for fans in the physical world, right? That's where they meet and that's where they experience it. But outside the actual experience in a stadium for whatever sport you decide, even I would even say esports,
Yeah.
the TV screen is a unifying element in sports outside the stadium when you think of it, because if you go to the restaurant, it's going to be the TV showing you the game. If you choose to watch sports at home, which Mexicans, I think you've seen the data. We love it. There's these parties where people get together to watch any sort of sports. The TV is the common thread here. And I would assume that you're in a very, very special position to have a better understanding what's happening with the consumer in terms of sports when they're using your 10 million TVs or so.
Sure, yeah. And it's really special because during this study that we presented, we saw different behaviors depending on the type of the game. So if it's a decisive match, like final, semifinal, the behavior of the consumer is more collective. It's more sharing the experience. So people are going to buy something to eat. They're going to invite their friends to watch together, family. They're going to buy beer, soda, and these kinds of things and share the experience.
It's a social event. If it's a decisive match.
If it's a decisive match.
Wow.
And if it's not, it's like a regular match, it's a little bit different because the first thing they're going to do is, where I'm going to watch this. First thing they do. Second thing, let's prepare something for myself or my close family. So prepare the food, but it's more like chill, relax, it's more individual. So for the brands, it's important to understand this difference, to create the right communication.
Wow.
To tell the right story in the right moment.
So if it's a decisive match, it's a community event.
Yeah.
And if it's a regular match, say, it's more an indulgent event, more a personal space thing.
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's good because the brands can take advantage of this information and
of course
specific assets, specific communication for these different ways to watch.
And something that you couldn't do before, you can react quickly. What I love what's happening with nonlinear TV and with TV platforms such as yours is that you're able to quickly react to the situation. Say Mexico wins in a tournament and is going to the next phase, right? The national team, or Brazil's team, for that matter. You can probably learn that Monday morning, and probably the matches in Saturday, And these I would call them umbrella platforms.
Yeah.
You can quickly react and create something. I'm assuming it's really simple to, call Samsung ads, for example, and say, hey, I want to place this.
Yeah.
And then it's deeply personal.
It is.
And then you have a better level of a marketing strategy, which I think we're missing in a way.
Yeah, and that's true because we are not using connected TV yet with all its power of segmentation, because we can do exactly what you mentioned, and we have so many premium placements in the connected TV to take advantage of that. So as you mentioned, you learn that something is going to happen next Monday, and you can use it really quickly to put your brand there. 1 hour after the match, people start to connect to the platforms they want to go. And not only you can take advantage with days before, but if one thing you can do during a football match is, I have a chart in this study that I intend to share with everyone that shows during a football match what happens with the audience regarding switching channels, watching advertising, what happens specifically during the game. And what happens is 1 hour before, they start to connect to the TV. So you see the chart growing in the number of connected TVs. And together we see the impacts in connected TV advertising. Because every time you turn on your TV, the first thing you do is go to the first screen. You select the app you're going to watch. Yeah. In this place, there's the most premium asset, the most premium placement. That's the masthead. So if you put your brand there during a football match or right before a football match or like the entire day, you're not exactly sponsoring the event. You're putting your brand in the same moment that the event is going to happen, and your brand is going to be there when everybody connects to it.
That's very smart.
Yeah. It's way cheaper.
And when I honestly, with all honesty and transparency, I own Samsung TVs, and it's almost reflexive. You have this very particular button for the smart TV home screen, and you're right. I don't even give a second thought to it. I just turn on the TV and press that button.
Yeah.
And out of that button, I'll choose what app I want to visit, whatever, where. But I do my first spot is doing that. I would say, except Ricardo, in a Samsung frame. I have a regular Samsung, and I have a Samsung frame TV, which honestly I love. And I end up pushing that button, but first changing the art for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
I play around with what I'm watching, or for some reason. It's so weird. I haven't thought about it until you mentioned it, but yes, that's the first thing I do.
Yeah.
Even when I turn on that TV. That's so amazing.
And even in this case that you're going first to the art session, when you're going to watch a streaming app or linear TV, you have to go to the first screen again to select the next
that's
app.
true.
And in one example of this match, for example, we are analyzing in all the details the match between America and Toluca in the Clausura tournament that happened in the beginning of this year. So we analyze minute by minute what happened in this match. We see the TVs being connected. A lot of impacts in the first screen, as I mentioned, because people are switching platforms, switching channels, going there. And then during the match, when a goal happens, so someone scored, you see a peak of first screen impacts as well. Every time we see a goal or something relevant, like a penalty or a red card, when something like this happens, you see a peak of first screen exposure again. You know
why is that?
Because if people, not everyone is watching the match, but sometimes you know that the match is happening, but you're doing something else. But you see the news in your phone and say, oh, there's a goal, a score. Let me see what is happening. Then you switch channel. And when you do that, you need to go to the first screen. And before you go to the match, that's
scary.
And when you hear your neighbors,
yes,
you're gonna be there to see what's happening. You switch channel and you go.
That's true. That's true. I've done that.
Yeah, it happens so often. On average, 4 times during a football match, you have this opportunity to show your brand.
So more goals is better for you guys.
Right.
So you want games with 7, 8, 9, 10 goals. Well, yeah, probably need to have more NBA games or something like that.
Exactly.
So yeah, so there's much more scoring in basketball than soccer. I think that's true. And it's scary what you can get when you look at data, right? You get very special understanding of what the consumer is doing.
Exactly. And this is really special because now we have so much information that it's really hard to understand how to use it.
Yeah.
So, and as I mentioned before, we need to use our natural intelligence before anything to know what exactly I need to question. What is my question to all this data? And today, the biggest question is, how can I find my customer in the right moment, in the right time, telling the right story in this fragmented environment?
Would you agree that a simpler approach to those questions is much better than a complicated approach?
Definitely. Definitely. Of course, you can create groups of people that have the same behavior or similar behavior, and you can try to reach this person. But the best thing is, do you really know your client? Do you really know what they do? And what we are doing more and more and more is specializing how we see the client, not only with our data, because we need to understand what they do outside of the TV as well. So for a brand, for a car company, for example, we need to help them to find their client.
Yeah.
But if you look only to the content, it's really hard to find what someone
What triggers somebody to buy a car, right?
Exactly. So what they do in their TV. So only looking to our first party data, it's complicated. But when you understand the client, when you understand what is the behavior of people that normally buy a car every 2 years or something like that, then you can understand if they have some patterns in TV consumption as well. And that's what we have been doing. We are running many surveys. We work with some big companies that owns a lot of data, and we use this information and we ask, are you gonna buy a car in the next 12 months? Are you gonna to travel? What are you gonna do? So we create many different verticals, and we create patterns of TV consumption. And every time a brand wants, for example, for a car company, as I was mentioned, they want to sell a car, electric car. We go to this survey and we ask, what do you like to do? I like more nature. I like to travel. I like to do many different things.
So, and is that polling done directly in the app when you access the system? Or
no, this is a survey, external survey. So I hire a company to ask them all these questions to connect to the product I want to sell, a car. So I see everything that that is related to a car buyer outside of the screen. But I also ask what they do when they watch TV. When I do that, I create similar clusters that I can find and match with my database. And what we do is I create like a funnel. So I start with, I want to buy a car in the next 12 months. And I also do this, and that. And I also watch streaming every weekend for 2 hours, specifically streaming 1, 2, and 3. Then I come here to my database, I find this cluster, and I start running the campaigns. And when I do that, I look to everyone that's clicking in the banners, that's watching the video, the entire video. So who's engaging more with the campaign? And we use a machine learning process to understand the perfect profile for everyone that's engaging with that product. So we create a predictive model to sell a car based on TV consumption.
And I would assume, well, that's very complicated, but I would assume that also content drives consumption. We had in the podcast a couple of days ago, well, weeks ago, he said Rodriguez, she used to lead the marketing strategies for Luxottica, which is, as you know, Ray-Ban and other brands. And we were discussing how you used to have this particular model of Ray-Ban glasses, the aviators. I'm sure you've seen them, right?
Yeah.
So she was telling me that every time, Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise or in a new movie uses those glasses again, there's those sunglasses, there's a peak in consumption. And it makes sense. And the interesting thing is they are the same pair of glasses. The model hasn't changed. So every time a TV star goes retro and uses those again, consumption goes up.
Yeah.
And I think that same is true for a lot of things, where you probably forgotten about them, and then you see them and then you decide to consume them. And I think the best example when you think about TV is probably a beer or a coffee or some food where when you think of it, you see somebody having a coffee,
Yeah.
or you see an image of a coffee, and then you want to have coffee. We discussed that earlier today.
Yeah.
I think there's a very interesting correlation between content and consumption, and I think that's why product placement within content is so popular.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, for example, in a movie, as you mentioned, you can classify the movie only as action or horror or something like that. But it's too shallow because you're not seeing everything that's happening in that movie.
Yeah.
So if you have a better description of everything that's happening, so this is metadata, we can connect if people are watching often movies with that specific content, not only horror movies, but what is happening in that movie. They're traveling, they're fighting, they are, I don't know, marrying. So you can understand the details about the content and use that to create better segmentation.
Is there a use case of a brand that has impressed you? Because you're looking at data, right? So brands come to Samsung Ads and decide to invest. They put money into the platform, and that, I would assume, converts into a marketing strategy, advertising strategy, whatnot. Is there a use case that has impressed you, Ricardo, that has blown your mind?
I can remember a few, for example, a beer brand that wanted to understand, they wanted to connect with gamers because it's not something that you correlate directly. But with our data, we can understand somehow who is consuming beer, but also plays video game. For example, I'm one of those. And this message is you can't see just one part of the consumer. You need to understand everything they are doing. So if we know that people are engaged with gaming content, and they are also potential consumer of beer, we have all this information there. So it's something we can help the brands to connect and create this message. So yeah,
I guess that just based out of the content consumption, you can assume that he's of legal age, I would assume.
exactly like that.
Wow.
What we do, depending on the time. So yeah, there are many ways to infer that. And I always say, I don't know who is exactly watching the TV. I don't know the name. I don't have the email. I don't know anything. And that's the best part of my job, because it's not sensitive data I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with contextual data. So what we try to do is make sure that the context is right. Every time we are, shaping this segment to be sure that, okay, this is the right person. They are willing to do that exactly. And we use surveys to do that. We use our first party data as well.
I mean, you had analytics for all Latin America, right? So you see more than one country.
Yeah.
So is there something in the Mexican consumer in terms of viewership preferences that has surprised you versus other countries?
I can see specifically comparing to Brazil, because I'm looking more to those countries, and Mexicans are way more connected than Brazilians.
I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, it's true. I mentioned that in Mexico, 40%, almost 40% of the database don't watch linear at all. They watch way more streaming. In Brazil, this number is 30 to 32%. So Mexicans are way more connected. And regarding gaming, is the same thing. So they have more video games connected, more technology. So it's easy to compare. In the other way, for example, in this study about soccer, Brazilians are more connected to soccer. So one number that we notice is the top 5 sports that the Mexicans consume on average, because it's
it's just a layout.
yeah. But tennis is number 5.
Wow.
Number 4 is American football. Number 3, baseball and boxing. And number 1, football. But it changes a little bit depending on the period of the year. So American football is something really, really big here comparing to Brazil, for example. In Brazil, it's growing, but Mexicans are way more connected to the American sports. And the NFL, depending on or the American football, depending on the time of the year, if it's a playoff match, if it's the Super Bowl, it comes to the second place in Mexico. But football is the number 1. The time consumed in all these sports, 77% of this time it's in football, only in Mexico. In Brazil, it's 91%. So we can see that in Brazil, they prefer more football. Soccer is like way bigger. But here, of course, football is still number 1. I think it's the number 1 sport for all Latin America. But the American sports are really big here as well.
And what are the top 5 platforms?
I'm not sure if I can say that because it's a ranking that I don't know if I can say that.
It's very controversial.
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot of competition with 8 platforms.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best kept secrets in the media world. Nobody wants to say which platform. I think that and what is the most seen TV show or one of those things that nobody wants to commit and say what is but you probably do know, and you probably will be willing to tell me what are the genres of movies preferred. Are we more of a horror, more of a drama, more of an action? What do Mexicans prefer in terms of content in movies?
In movies specifically,
yes,
drama and action, and I forgot a comedy as well, and horror movies as well. Horror movies way more than in Brazil. So
and are you measuring, for example, language? If people are watching TV in English or in Spanish or in Portuguese?
No, I can do based only in the language that the TV set up, but we don't do this analysis.
And I think it makes sense, and I think it's worth mentioning because people need to understand that there's limits also to what information you get.
Yeah, no, it's possible to do, but it's really complicated because what we do is to look to the image. We are looking to frames. So
it's a still image.
It's a still image, but we could also do this together with the audio recognition, but we are not using this technology in our TVs. We are using only the image technology. But going back to your question, I can't say the top streaming apps, but I can say that free apps are really big, so people are really willing to watch any free content, even with advertising. They're really willing to watch this in exchange of see some advertising. So the biggest apps, free apps, have a huge audience. And we have 3 or 4 apps competing like close, 2 in the top, but a lot of people competing. And the fast apps are growing a lot. So if you look to the Samsung TVs, we have the Samsung TV Plus app. It's basically linear content via streaming, because you have reality shows, sports, etc. Many different channels. Only in Mexico, we have 140 channels.
That's more than enough.
Yeah, it's more than enough. And it's really quality content.
And, well, it makes sense if you think of it, Ricardo, because just based on what you've mentioned today. So if the Mexican consumer has on average 5 subscriptions, right? And the average price for a subscription is probably around I don't know, 100 pesos, 100 pesos, $5 or $6. When you think of it, that's probably that's that's probably gonna take a huge chunk of your stipend for the month.
Exactly.
I mean, people can be spending anywhere between probably 1,000 or $1,200, 1,200 pesos a month just in subscriptions, and that's not a small amount,
No.
especially when you think about also renting movies and buying movies and other series of content activities online. And if you look at the average income or family income in Mexico, that's probably going to be anywhere between 2 and 5% of the household income. It's not a small amount of money, especially young couples or young professionals. It makes sense that people want to watch free content. At least speaking from my experience, what I'm noticing is that every more so there's paid apps where you're getting advertising too.
Exactly. And
So it doesn't make that much sense anymore. It used to be that you had a paid app because you wouldn't have advertising.
exactly.
But now I would think about probably 2 or 3 examples of the major players have advertising within their content.
Yeah.
Which then, if I'm going to get advertising, I much rather not pay for the app, right?
Yeah, and for the biggest part of the population, I think it makes total sense to watch free content
Yes.
because it's really hard to pay for all those apps. So yeah, there's so many opportunities for the advertisers now to understand all the content that is being offered in a free.
In the Samsung TV Plus app, can't recall if that's the case. I do remember you need to be logged on to the TV every time you turn it on, but do you have to log in to see this app? Not specifically, right?
No, you don't need to be logged in. You don't need to download. You don't need to do anything.
It's
It's already available.
It's part of but yeah.
It's part of the environment. Just click and start to watch.
And when you think of it, that's probably also a reason why people are preferring free apps, because then if you turn on a smart TV, it's going to have the app and you don't have to put in your login details.
Exactly. And this is why it's so special because it's easy to use and it's a chill experience. When you don't want to think about, because people takes a lot of time to decide what they're going to watch. Not always you are willing to do that. Sometimes you just want to sit in front of the TV and watch something. And you can, switch channels until you find something cool. And that's the experience of the Samsung TV Plus app.
And is that something you can analyze, how much time people invest before watching something?
Yeah.
How much is that? I want to know that.
So looking to the first screen, because I can't see what they are doing inside the apps. So inside each app, it's really hard. But on average, 10 minutes to decide what they do regarding which app.
Choosing which app to use.
Yeah.
Just choosing the app.
Just choosing the app. All the time that you go to the first screen and you start to decide and scroll, go, okay, I'm going to go to this one. No, maybe the other. Open, they come back to the screen. So 10 minutes to decide.
That's a lot.
It is.
Just for the app. And probably, to be honest, you're not measuring when people go back to the homepage and recalibrating their choice. Because I know that happens to me. I don't know if it happens to you, that I want to watch something and I go into an app and I spend probably 30 or 40 minutes trying to find something.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It happens a lot with me. It's crazy because and if you consider that we have 5 options on average, it's a lot. And sometimes you know what you're going to watch, but most of the times, no, you want to discover something new. And that's why content is still the king, as we were saying. Because if you have the content that you want to watch in your mind, maybe you go directly to there.
And here's the challenge. So let's say it's a Sunday afternoon and I just sat down. I want to watch my TV. I turn on my TV. I choose my app. I go in there. And then, or I enter the free app, whatever, and I start, evaluating sport options, right? I'm looking for a specific game or something. When I come back to the home screen, is the advertising quick enough to have an option that says, I'm going to react to this specific choice where I'm seeing him looking for sports, and then I'm going to put an ad related to that funnel. Is that fast?
Not yet. We can measure your behavior.
And then based on that, next time do it.
Exactly. So every time you connect it to the TV, I'm going to be ready to show these options, because I know that every time you try to explore different options with sports.
I would say, Ricardo, consumers, many times we confuse immediacy with strategy. And here's my point. I'm sure you've heard this example where Instagram was considered that they could load the images up to a server pretty quickly, right? And everybody was impressed. And that this is before they got purchased or bought out by Facebook and so forth. And when they sat down with the programmers, they told them, how are you able to make the server react so fast? You choose the image and it loads pretty quickly. And the guy said, simple. We predicted that when people chose the image, they were the probability of them changing it was really low. And while people were writing the message, we were already uploading the image.
Exactly.
So when you press the next button, it was already uploaded. So the progress bar was something that was not real. And 90% or whatever percent of the times, the image was already uploaded. And I think that's to your point. I think that's the magic of being predictive. If you know that I'm gonna sit down a Saturday afternoon and gonna watch a soccer game, you can make me feel that it's personalized when it's actually predictive.
Exactly, because I can see how many times you normally use the first screen and for how long you stay there.
Wow.
So, so I can tell the advertisers. So we have a group of people that stays in the first screen for this amount of time. So, and they normally look for this type of content. And yeah, this is something we can use and create a specific communication.
I would assume the challenge for the advertising isn't as much as what they can do, but decide when given so many options of what they can do, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the problem now, because we are competing for the time of the consumer. We have a lot of options. Only consider the TV. So they might be playing video game for a specific number of hours. They watch streaming, they watch linear.
Or they watch YouTube, which is a mix of both.
Or listen to music.
Oh, listen to music, yeah.
Many options. So what you need to understand is what your consumer do. If you know that, you can balance your investment. So for a brand that is investing a lot of money in linear ads and their customers are not watching linear anymore, like I mentioned, 40% of the Mexicans in the Samsung database, they are spending a lot of money with low results. But if you invest in the right person, because part of this audience is watching linear content, if you know who is this group of people, you keep putting your money there, but you invest your money in streaming, in music, and video games, so you can understand better the media that they are using, for how long and when. So that's the thing. You need to balance your investment. It's all complementary. You need to be everywhere now.
Yeah.
But to know that, you need to know your client. You need to know if they're using streaming. And if they're using the streaming, you're putting money on that. Because as you mentioned, there are many options with advertising now.
Yeah.
They say, okay, I'm already investing in streaming number one. Yeah, but do you know if your audience is watching streaming number one for the time you need? Because maybe they are using, because they have the scale, they say, okay, I have millions of clients, but your clients, for how long they are watching that? Do you know if they're going to be able to watch your advertising as many times as you were expecting? Or it were to go to a free app, or it were to balance between apps? So in this CTV environment I mentioned of the manufacturer, in the case of Samsung, we can see that, and we can have the brands to plan their media investments.
I think that's interesting, because it seems like the way you're creating advertising based on platforms, based on apps, let's use that word, apps, is a user-based approach in terms of analytics, very similar to what you would get in, I don't know, whatever platform you think of in social media or in the internet for that matter. And that has its limits.
Yeah.
It's very session-based, very view-based, and but there's not that much analytics, and we're getting technical here, but the dispersion of data and the variance of data is so crazy that finding insights is very hard. Whereas if you look at it from your example, the CTV platform, the data is more unified. It's probably easier to analyze and reach insights. Yeah, I haven't thought about it that way, but it's much more interesting when you think of it.
Yeah, and what we are doing now more often is working with the agencies and clients in a consulting way, because we are helping them to say, okay, you need to invest in free apps. So we have Samsung TV Plus. Of course, I'm there to sell Samsung advertising,
Yeah, why not?
but
Or TVs, or that's fine.
are you willing to invest in streaming number one? Okay. Streaming number two? Okay, but your audience is watching 30% of their time in streaming number one or in streaming number two. When I find their audience, when I know their clients, I can help them to find them in the right place in the right time. So they balance the investments.
I think that's why I was saying a while back that the TV is a stadium in a way where you get to see what's happening with sports and people.
Exactly. It's true. It's the perfect comparison. Yeah, I think so. And specifically to sports, yeah. If you go again to the topic we were mentioned before, Mexicans prefer to watch the match in their houses. 96% in the survey said that they prefer to watch in their houses.
And I'm going to say something here, Ricardo. I'm sure next year that's going to be especially true.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we're expecting around 6 million visitors, and I would assume I'm betting that that's going to be higher. I think Mexico is gonna take the lion's share of sports tourism for North America next year, and that has a lot to do with what's going on with the United States in terms of what the sports matches they have, and with Canada in particular, and those specific issues in those countries contextually. And Mexico is positioned to get a lot of visitors, and that in a way, and we've seen it every time there's huge sports matches in a country, especially when they're international.
Yeah.
Locals tend to go home.
Yeah, exactly.
They tend to cater to tourists, which is great. It's great for the economy, but when people want to live the sport, they go home.
Exactly. And for 96% of the people that answered the survey, they prefer to watch in their houses. And better than that, for the CTV industry, they prefer to watch the matches in the big screen.
It makes a huge difference to watch it in a large TV.
Exactly. In this kind of championship that are going to happen next year, it brings people from outside of the bubble of the sports.
Yeah.
Because it's an event that connects everyone. Even if you're not a sports fan, we're going to watch. So it's opportunity for any brand. Even if your brand is not directly connected to a championship like that, to a sport or to soccer specifically, you can use this moment.
I agree. I'm not a soccer fan, to be honest, and I watch every 4 years that there's this major soccer event. I watch the national team. It's more of a national reflex.
Exactly.
And I think that looking at what's going to happen, especially because this soccer tournament is going to be a 3-country event, I think that's a very interesting opportunity. And again, Mexico is going to, I would say, take the lion's share of tourism. I hope I'm right.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion, but it's a prediction. It's more of an opinion than a prediction. I think that's going to, again, move people towards home and community events, especially because there's a set number of games, and that's going to make those games crucial.
Exactly.
Which is to your point. that much more interesting. It's not going to be just a passing event. It's going to be a crucial event because we only have 6 or 5 or something like that.
And you know, and this is a huge opportunity for all the brands. Think about connected TV in this situation, because you can use all this data and you can put your brand in the big screen in this kind of event without having to spend millions and millions and millions.
Because not all brands have the budget to spend in the sponsorship as a sponsors for these major events. And that's true for soccer, for golf, for basketball, for American football.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%. So it's a huge opportunity. I think it's something that needs to be in the media plan of every agency and every client.
Well, honestly, I hope they do.
Yeah, I hope they do too.
I hope they do. I'm a user of your products, as I said, and I think it's a great opportunity, honestly. I think that what I would say, Ricardo, is that sometimes we forget that the best marketing is based on the idea of contrast. All right. So I'm going to use this example before we leave. I think there's a reason why marketers went in the office in the 60s using jeans and turtlenecks when everybody was using suits. Right, because then they were in contrast with everything, with the establishment, and that made them special. And that is marketing. Marketing is contrast. When everybody follows the same strategy, you're not innovating, you're not contrasting, you're not doing anything different. So you're one more out of a set number of options. So I think that this is a great opportunity for brands to create a contrasting strategy.
Exactly.
And place themselves in a space where there's nobody else.
Perfect. That's perfect, because I agree 100%. There's something we need to explore more. We need to talk more about that.
Yeah, I think we do. I think we should. People don't understand the amount of insights you can get from CTV, but also other technologies. And I think we're so focused on the user-based analytics, as I said, which is the traditional. And it's incredible talking about traditional and digital, but it is. But this traditional user-based insight, where you have a username and a login, and that's the only thing you analyze. You're not analyzing true trends, if you think of it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
It's amazing. Thank you very much, Ricardo. I'm a sucker for data, so I could keep this going for 2 more hours. But I'm so glad you visited Mexico. I understand you're flying back to Brazil, so thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for me to be here. I'm really happy to be here, sharing this and talking to you, because it's something I love. I love to talk about data, and I love this moment of opportunity for all the brands to start thinking about that. And yeah, I think we should do that more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you everybody for spending this time with us, speaking about something that both Ricardo and I love so much, which is data. Thank you very much, guys. I see you next week. Bienvenidos al podcast de Mercados.0. Yo soy Álvaro Rattinger. Nos vemos la próxima semana.